all know, we've come today for a launch of the book Madam Sir by the respected Manjari Daruvar ma'am. It's a great privilege and honor to have known ma'am. I had met ma'am recently with the National Conference of Women Police Officers in Shimla. So I take it a great privilege to welcome ma'am today. Welcome ma'am. I request our respected DJ and IT sir to kindly welcome ma'am and give her for 1%.
It's indeed a pleasure to welcome Mrs. Manjari Jarohar, ma'am for us, and welcome all of you after we launch this sporty.
Madam sir.
Yes.
Well said, Ramesh.
So in fact I want to welcome especially all of you because this is probably the first event, literary event which we are holding in this newly renovated sporty, what we call sporty, earlier it used to be Junior Police Officers Mess. Just to introduce Mrs. Manjari Jarohar, we all know, many of us know 1976 batch, Bihar cadre, worked in NPA, CISF, CRPF and retired as Special DG in 2010. She is the first woman IPS officer from Bihar and she carries a reputation of highly effective, professional and caring officer, and in the words of Mr. Ribeiro, a good human being, just to quote Julius Ribeiro. After retirement, she headed anti-piracy wing of Indian music industry. Now she is with TCS as well as with FICCI, FICCI. Married to Rakesh, a fellow batchmate of her, and here we welcome Mrs. Manjari Jarohar once again, and I am with all of you. In fact, when I invited ma'am for launch of this book, she said, why don't we invite the 85 to 90 batch officers? I said, why 85 to 90 alone? You have been a role model for generations, not only for lady officers, but generations of officers. So I am so glad, particularly happy to see not only IPS officers, IAS officers, their spouses, among all of us. So that's where, so I special thanks to Mr. ISN Prasad and Chief Secretary Mrs. Vandita Prasad Chet. She will also be joining very soon. So, starting this conversation, ma'am, officers usually wait for their retirement to write a book because there are so many controversial things in the book that they feel that if they write while in service, they'll offend so many people. So everyone waits for retirement and then they write the book. You waited for 12 years. Why that long?
As I've written in my preface, but before I talk about the book, I'd really like to thank Praveen for organizing this session. I was extremely touched and really felt what should I say, connected with probationers, which we have always felt throughout our career. It was a very big thing for me personally to be teaching at the police academy and looking after training batch, IPS batches from 85 to 90. We'll talk about it later. But we have always tried to stay connected with them wherever I have gone. I've always got contact with them. I was extremely touched when he said, when he rang me up and said that he would like to organize a get-together, an event at the mess, and he'd invite everybody. So first I'd like to thank him and I'd like to thank everybody who has come. Now to start the session and to talk about why I wrote the book, it was mostly because of my brother, as I have acknowledged. He is now the chairperson of Ashoka University and the first dean of ISP. So he is into this pursuit. So he went after me, likho, तुमको लिख देना चाहिए, and he tried to persuade me. So I made a feeble attempt in 2011-12, but I had no intention of writing a book. And I did not preserve any diary or any of my notes or whatever we have in the police, or even the inquiry reports or whatever I had inquired into. After my retirement, we just remove everything. Let's finish everything now. Let's have another beginning. So I had nothing, and he persuaded. I tried to write, but it somehow did not work, and I gave it up. But during the pandemic, I was stranded in Patna with my mother, and again he persuaded me, and then this time both my sons joined. and they started saying that, Amma, please write because everything will be forgotten. At least write it for our own daughters. Both of them have a daughter each. So उनके लिए तो एक record रहेगा. So I then again started writing, and that's how I wrote after. How many years did you say for me? 12 years after my retirement.
Because when I was reading through the book, I didn't find anything controversial which will hurt anyone. It's basically journey of your life, journey of your professional and personal life. So having said that, I take your permission to read a paragraph. This is about the first day when you landed in your district posting. I think that's a historic day. So I just take the liberty. It was a cold December morning in 1977. I woke up early and lay in the bed in my parents' home in Patna. Was I nervous? Excited? I think a bit of both. It was a fresh day beginning, the beginning of my life on duty. I put on my new uniform, a smart khaki ensemble that I loved, shirt tucked into trousers, a sweater, then a crossbelt across my uniform, a peak cap, and shoes that shone and winked at me. I looked into the mirror. A young, determined officer looked back at me. My mother came into the room to check on me. She looked surprised, even a little bemused. It was the first time she was seeing the elder daughter in khaki. Very nice, she smiled. And then you mentioned that I was ready for active police duty. I was first ushered into the office of EIG Administration, Mr. Kailash Pati, who gave me some paperwork to complete. He asked me rather curious questions. Why I had joined the police? Did I not know it was a tough job? Would I be able to do work in the night shifts? After waiting for a while, it's very interesting. After waiting for a while, I was asked to go and meet IG, Mr. Rajeshwar Lal. I entered the room and executed a sharp salute. I was in awe of him and wanted to make a good impression. After the salute, I stood at attention, waiting for his instructions. He said nothing. And the second stepped by. He didn't even look up but continued to write in the file. After a long moment of silence, he finally looked up. He did not ask me who I was. He already knew. Oh, you have come? He took one look at me and went straight back to his file. But I don't know what to do with you. I cannot post you until I study the file of Mrs. Kiran Bedi. I have asked for it from Delhi. Ma'am, how did you feel at that particular moment? The first moment of your official duty. What was running in your mind?
I was very disappointed, as Praveen has read in the book, that I went with all the excitement, you know. All of you must have, some of you who are IPS officers must have felt that when you are in your crisp uniform and you report for the first time in the state, you think that you are at the top of the world and you are ready to conquer the world. Cross belt hair, everything is there, your peak cap is there, your shoes are all shining because you want to make an impression on the DG. And here when I arrived, he doesn't even look up. But when I arrived at the secretariat, I would like to read that. As I climbed out of my father's car, I could feel many pairs of eyes on me, following me as I walked up the stairs. I was possibly the only woman in trousers there. The staff in the IG's office stopped their work and stared. I tried to block out the curious glances. This feeling of being like a fish in a glass bowl was to become my constant companion wherever I went in uniform in the days to come. Some of you maybe are here from Bihar and you know the Patna Secretariat. It's a huge cavernous building, and when I'm getting there, down there is like your Vidhan Sauda and all. So many windows, and from every window people are looking at me. Now I'm feeling more elated. अरे हम तो first woman IPS officer होके आ रहे हैं. I'm sorry, I'm using Hindi also together so that it becomes the way it was. Then when I arrive and the DG says nothing to me, I really felt very, very disappointed. Extremely disappointed and dejected. And then I just marched out thinking, what is it that has to be done about Kiran Bedi's file? But I would like to admit that I am in service only because of Mrs. Kiran Bedi, as I have written in the book. My father had no intention of me joining the IPS. He thought that this job was not meant for me. It was only one of his uncles who was a DG of, who was in those days the IG of police, Mr. Palazzo would know, there were only IGs in those days. who came and persuaded my father कि आपने देखा नहीं है किरण बेदी is on the Rajpath, she is marching on 26 January parade. Why aren't you sending her? That's how I joined the police. Otherwise, my father was not ready. So, but still, I was wondering why Kiran Bedi's file. She's in Delhi, I'm in Patna. Felt totally dejected, and because the orders for everybody else was issued by that evening. There were 6 batchmates who went to Bihar. Orders were issued for 5, but for me the orders were not issued.
So I want to
I
ask
was
you.
crushed.
Yeah.
I was crushed. As I stepped off his office, I shivered again. This time it was from the frosty welcome I had just received. So that was my first day on the job. But in your career, as in life, there is always the next day and the day after that. I brushed off my initial disappointment like a speck of dust on my new uniform. It is this ability to look past hurdles and hiccups that has held me in good stead throughout my career. In that moment, I wanted to focus on what an honor it was to be the first woman IPS officer of Bihar Police. This is my story. So this is what I felt, that crushed everything, but I said, it's okay, let's wait. Maybe tomorrow will be another day. Like Scarlett O'Hara says in Gone with the Wind, so many ladies are here, they would have all read, people are smiling. She says tomorrow is another day, and I thought, yes, tomorrow will be another day.
So I want to ask you something. You left service after 34 years. How
Yes.
has the situation changed? What's your assessment? Vis-a-vis lady officers.
I think the situation has changed quite a bit. Before I joined, there were only 1 woman officer in every batch. We started with Kiran Bedi. Next year there was Kanchan Chaudhary, or more she became DG of Uttarakhand, but unfortunately she's no more. 73 also we had 1 lady officer. 74 also we had 1 lady officer. And then 75, my colleague and esteemed friend Jija Hari Singh came, and she was there in 75, again 1. And in my batch there were 6 lady officers.
No, but the attitude of senior officers.
But the attitude, I think, in many states, after I have written this book also, I get a lot of feedback. I was at the National Police Academy also for 5 years, and I had lady officers coming in. Wherever lady officers went as the first in that state, they had the same problem as me. They were all pushed back. They were not accepted. But today I think the situation has changed, and I'm sure Praveen would like to shed some light on this, that Karnataka itself has so many lady officers. It is in fact the preferred destination for many married couples. Women have preferred to come to Karnataka than to go somewhere else. And in Bihar and in Jharkhand, by the time I left Jharkhand, we had 9 lady officers there, and the acceptability is much better. Some people do have problems, but I think all male officers also may be having problems once in a while. We have to face whatever is coming our way, but definitely the pushback is not there. The pushback is not there. If you are ready to work, people are, the politicians or the powers that be are ready to accept you and move ahead.
So I like to just create an I feel as DG. Now the attitude of officers has totally neutralized and is very positive. Probably politicians need to work a bit harder
Okay.
in accepting women officers even now in the field postings. But I remember the same officer who treated you the way you told later on became politician.
Yes.
And he met you
MLC.
somewhere and he said people think very highly of you.
Yes.
What was the feeling? Did you feel that, oh, I have taken the revenge?
No, I did not feel like that. And he came and he was contesting it. He had already become an MLC, you know, of the council. And he went around Bokaro, and everywhere he went, people must have talked about me. So he came to my house, and this time he was in a different dress. He was in a kurta and dhoti. And I had to welcome him to my house. I still served him because he was my boss previously. But to give him credit, he accepted, and he said that, but he didn't say that I had not judged, I had judged you like that. That he didn't say. He said that I'm very happy that you are doing so well. People have a lot of regard for you, and it gives me a lot of happiness. So I just accepted it because in the police hierarchy, we are so hierarchy bound that there are very few occasions when you can be taught. We were never taught at that time, nor is it like that. People may discuss more, DGs will be more open now to discuss some ideas, but surely you can't tell him that, sir, that day you said this to me. You can't. That scope is not there in any service, but in the police there is no scope at all. So I accepted it very gracefully as to whatever he had to say, and thank you.
So let's talk a bit about your assignments. Now, many of us would remember Bhagalpur blindings, and I think it was called, even a movie was made, Ganga Jal.
Yes.
It was called Operation Ganga Jal. Those who do not know, the acid was put in the eyes of many alleged criminals, not criminals, alleged criminals. And a lot of people celebrated it and said that, oh, it's like akin to, like we wash our sins with the Ganga Jal. And you were asked to go and inquire after these blindings. Now, why I am asking you, even till date, of course, you please, you will tell me what did you say and how did you feel, because it's like an ethical dilemma. On one end, you feel that people are, what they have done is wrong. On the other hand, you see people who are rejoicing and celebrating, but it keeps happening even today. And every time there is a rape, people talk about castration, shoot them down, or even in murders now, shoot the criminals down is so often. So, what do you have to share about this Bhagalpur? You submitted a report. I'm sure you hurt many people on the wrong, you touched many people on the wrong side.
So I was still very young when I was drafted for this Bhagalpur blinding. I had not yet done a district. I had done a subdivision, a top subdivision. I had done Danapur. That also after a lot of pushing myself and telling the DG, sir, I have to do a subdivision. If you don't give me a subdivision, my career will be finished. I've written a whole chapter on that, how tough it was to get a subdivision. I was doing a pen pusher's job in the CID, a very boring job. All my batchmates were already handling subdivisions and talking about this, that and the other. I was like a spare person in the CID that needed a team. Indira Gandhi had asked the Chief Minister that immediately some action should be taken. So the team, which was headed by Mr. L.V. Singh, was the DIG under whom I had trained, and he took me to Bhagalpur. When we arrived to Bhagalpur, just to put you in the perspective, as Praveen says, there was slogan shouting against us. The entire Bhagalpur town was up in arms, and people were shouting slogans against the team which had arrived. And we thought that maybe this is orchestrated by the policemen who had indulged in this crime. But soon we discovered it was not true, because even when we arrived in the circuit house, people came and started shouting slogans and saying that we should go back in the same helicopter in which we have come and all. But we stayed back and started our inquiries. We felt that the public was unnecessarily talking like this, because when next morning the people who had been blinded came in front of us, it was a horrible sight, as anyone can imagine, eyes gouged, all these acid put. But the public was roaring. They were very happy that this has happened, and this is because criminals had been taken to task. Because one famous criminal there, Anil Yadav, his method was to kidnap people, kill them, and cut the body into parts and throw it in the Ganga. So the body was never found. He was the most notorious criminal in Bhagalpur in those days. He would rape the women in front of the family. There was a woman I've written about, it is written in the book, with her breast chopped and raped in front of the family. So it was like that. Now when I started doing the inquiry, as Praveen has mentioned, that how do you do an inquiry against your own sub-inspectors who are doing this to control crime? And it is a fact that crime was controlled in Bhagalpur. It is a fact that people got so scared that they stopped, they ran away from Bhagalpur. But the dilemma was that many of the people who were blinded were not really hardened criminals. They were very, very petty people. Like one person I remember, Suresh Shah, I remember some of the names. Now my memory is very bad, but of that time. He was agitating for daily wages of a particular amount. And then the zamindar or the person who owned that field told the sub-inspector that, look, this man is creating trouble in my field. Please take him away and fix him. So this petty landless laborer was picked up and blinded. So there were cases like this. A petty Eve teaser, he was a sardar, he was picked up and blinded. So there were these very, very hard cases. So I learned very early in my career, and I have adhered to it completely, because my own PA's brother, who was a young sub-inspector, was also indicted in this. He was also involved in this blinding, and my PA would keep saying, madam, please help my brother. His career will be finished. He has just joined the service. He's a sub-inspector, and in Bihar or anywhere else, a sub-inspector's job is a big thing. So those dilemmas for a young IPS officer, 6 to 7 years of service, was really there. But that also taught me a lesson, and I don't condone this. Even if they say that rapists should be killed and all, I have not been able to condone this. It always reminds me as to that this track is laden with lot of problems. It has even the recent incident of Hyderabad, we are reading what is happening. In UP, my batchmates would come in the training at the NP and tell us, oh, we have 20 down, 15 down, but we could not indulge into it. And even when I became DIG Patna, I put a complete stop to it. I could not tolerate this, and I don't think that it pays in the long run. Somewhere it will catch up, and somewhere the police gets into trouble, then only we get into the trouble, nobody else helps us out that time. Neither the courts, the public, or anybody, they will not. So it's at your own risk, and it's not a very good thing.
Maybe it was ingrained in your genes, because I remember in UPSC interview you were asked a question.
Yes.
If a criminal is running, will you shoot him down? And you were nonplussed, you didn't know what to answer.
Exactly.
And you said, if law permits it, I will shoot him.
Yes.
Anyway, coming to something more interesting. You went to Bokaro and you were known as Hunter Wali. Now, did you enjoy it, or you felt embarrassed, and how did you get this reputation?
Now to this
Was it
day-
Bokaro? Am I right?
What?
It
It was in
Bokaro.
Bokaro. So this Hunter Wali thing, I really don't know how it happened.
What did you do to be called a Hunter?
Maybe because I was very strict with this wearing of helmet, because we had so many accidents. The major crime in Bokaro was accidents. Can you believe it? It's not a priority for any superintendent of police, traffic accidents. But in Bokaro, it is a township laid out in the Russian pattern with straight roads and blocks. So the roads are all at 90 degrees. And during the change of shift, people are driving at the highest speed to reach on time their workplace inside the plant. So we would have accidents almost every day. So the minute I joined, when I saw the crime graph, I said, let's start this system of everybody wearing helmets, and the police must patrol the area where the entry to these plants are. You know, these public sector plants, I don't know whether you have something like that in Karnataka, but in those there are 40,000, 50,000 workers. Each shift about 15,000 people plus 15,000 laborers entering the plant. There are not one gate, there are 9 to 10 gates from which this movement is taking place. And at that time, the entire township comes to a halt. Nothing happens except the movement of the manpower. So I was everywhere. The men were everywhere. I was everywhere, checking gates, ensuring that nobody does this thing. It paid dividends. I've also mentioned that story when a woman clung to me and said that you have saved my husband because he was wearing a helmet. He doesn't listen to us. Women folk का कोई बात नहीं सुनता है. You are a woman and you ensured it. So I feel it came from there, but I have never enjoyed that reputation. I didn't like it. And my parents were quite horrified. And I have mentioned in the book that even my DIG somehow enjoyed sometimes these things, because he narrated to me an incident which I have recorded in the book, that one day he tells me that he was at some party and people were telling him that the SP is such a strong, tagda person that she pushes a truck and it moves. So people like to talk, people who had not seen me, because I must be much younger and more, what should I say, thinner and younger looking, and still to say that I could push a truck. So I never liked it. I'm even till today I'm embarrassed about it because it gives a different image from what I really am.
So let's talk about your years in NPA, and you have called these years as your golden years in your profession. And I also read that before you, Kiran Bedi was asked, and she said no.
Yeah, that's
And you gave up all the, all the aram and all the facilities of state police. That time NPA didn't have much facilities. It was a tough life. So just tell us your years in NPA.
So I had already put in 8 years of service. I was considered a successful SP of Bokaro, even though I had to do a lot of penance, lot of requesting everybody to post me to a district. All my batchmates went to a district, but I am again posted to the CID doing nothing. And when I was finally posted to Bokaro, I think I was able to do fairly well in Bokaro. One fine morning, Mr. Ribeiro called up. I had never ever met Mr. Ribeiro. I didn't even know his name. And I was told by the Home Secretary that there is a call from Mr. Ribeiro and they are asking for you. Will you be willing to go? And my husband said that yes, we should go to NPA. You know, in police, even now, very often training is considered a very side job. It's not considered an important job. It's a job which many people don't like to take. They say, oh, it's a dumping ground. Why are we doing good training? But I think I had enough of district, because my husband was posted miles away from me and I was in some other part of the state. It was impossible to communicate. STD phones were not available. If my husband wanted to talk to me, I would have to go to some place and talk on the radio telephone of the DIG's office. So we had enough of it, and I thought that we'll get posted together, but anyway, when this came, we went to NPA. NPA turned out to be really the best years of my life, I think, because suddenly from working in a very constricted atmosphere where you are confined to doing only law and order crime in a small place and you are being pushed back, don't want you, what is your need? Suddenly at NPA the world opened, and here there was nobody to judge you whether you were a lady or a male officer or a gentleman officer. You were treated there at par. You could do everything. As you know, many of you are IPS officers and wives of IPS officers and spouses. There is no difference between the training of a lady IPS officer and a male IPS officer. The same training, everything is the same. There is no difference in any riding or shooting or parade, PT, everything is at par. Now when I went there, it was an open atmosphere and we could work. There was nobody to say that, oh, you should do, why have you come to the police academy? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And the kind of exposure we had at NPA, the kind of people who came to interact with the IPS officers, we traveled to different states. So at a very young age, we had a lot of exposure which we could not have had there. And today, when Praveen says that in the whole country today, all the CPO chiefs are my probationers, or all the DGs are my probationers, it is extremely heartening for me, extremely heartening. And even at this age, I feel so invigorated if I go to a state and I ring up somebody and I know that, okay, there is somebody there and I can chat and find out how everybody else is doing. Or he rings me up in Delhi and says, ma'am, I've not met him for about 35 years, but he still rings up and says, ma'am, why are you coming to Karnataka? We'll host this. It has been like a family for me. It really opened my horizon, it opened even my thinking, and from then I never looked back. So I'm really grateful to Mr. Ribeiro for giving me this break. And people asked me, there was a very interesting interview and somebody asked me, what is the relationship between luck and hard work? Which do you value? So I thought about it. I said, I've really not thought. But when I look back in my career, I think hard work always pays. And luck may come sometimes, but luck happens only because you put in hard work. And in my own case, I feel that it was luck that Mr. Ribeiro called me, or not me, but he called the Home Secretary. But he called me only because after Kiran Bedi had refused, he went through the ACRs and he found that my ACR was very good. I had done a field, I had done so many other things in the state. I had done a CID, I had done the Bhagalpur blindings. So then they picked me up. So it was obviously my hard work and my performance that helped me to come to NPA, and I've never looked back from that posting. My whole attitude to CIS, to the police changed after that.
So talking about hard work, one passion which I see in all your postings, whether it was CRPF or CISF or NPA, is of your passion for housekeeping. Now all government offices are known for all garbage, broken furniture, files. No one thinks it's their priority to clean it. And whichever posting you went to, you were doing a lot of housekeeping. So is it a professional trait or it's your woman in you which comes out? Woman instinct.
That's a really interesting question. My boss, Mr. L.V. Singh, who trained me, there is somebody who's Harihar Prasad Singh's son here. You would remember Mr. Lalit Vijay Singh. He was a very powerful police officer under whom I was trained. He used to tell me, and I've always remembered this till today, that the chair is not important, the person is important. Whichever chair you occupy, you can do good work and do sincerely. So even though I was all the time grumbling about my postings in the CID and table jobs in the initial years of my service, I never stopped working. It is not that I said, okay, I will not come to work, why should I look at this file? I worked with all my enthusiasm and passion which I had, even if it was a simple case. I had seen Mr. Vayan Srivastava, who was my DIG once in the armed police, telling me that he was commanding a battalion. He was the DIG of a battalion. And once he went on an inspection and he saw that an entire barrack after barrack were full of ballot boxes. Used ballot boxes were kept there. And the men were sleeping in tents outside the barracks. So I remember this story when now Praveen is asking me. So he said that I was so shocked that the men are staying in barracks and the men are staying in tents, and all the barracks we are preserving used ballot boxes. He started asking the quartermaster, why is this? The quartermaster said, "Ye sarkari sampatti hai, these are government property, so we are preserving it till it is condemned." So he said,
and we never do condemnation.
And we never do condemnation because a board has to be formed, and every board member doesn't want to do condemnation of vehicles, doesn't want to do condemnation of furniture or anything. So he says, there itself I sat with the commandant and condemned everything in the barracks and told them to throw it out, and shifted that night all the men in the barracks so that they could live comfortably. That story has always been with me. And when I joined the CISF, I think men are sitting in corridors with tables next to each other. There is no light in the corridor, and working there in files, working on pensions and working on annuities, and the big rooms are occupied with condemned furniture, condemned utensils. So I would always start, pehle isko bahar pheko, throw everything out, and any board, whoever is willing, please make a list, sign and throw it out, and then make the place habitable for men to sit. So I think that it is very important that we look after our men, because there is really nobody to speak for them, and we don't have any methodology. Of course now we have police sabhas and all, but we have to look after our people, because they are the people who are doing everything at the bottom level.
So talking about looking after people, another trait which I found and you have mentioned in your entire book is about police welfare. Now, we do a lot of police welfare, and we don't keep it till police welfare, but we extend it to the families of police welfare. And in fact, we look after their welfare even after retirement. And in my career, many officers have questioned me, "Arey, police fellow is just like any other government servant. Why should you worry? Why should we worry about his family also? Look after him after the retirement also. So, what in your in views? Why it's important to look after police families? Of course, COVID gave us a lot of answers.
Yes.
When the whole world was indoors, it was the policemen and of course the medical professional people. So, tell us something about your views on the police welfare. Because in government, many times there is a lot of resistance that we talk too much about welfare.
I think my eyes opened to police welfare when I got posted in the paramilitary forces. It is true that in the districts, we are so tied up with crime and law and order situations that we don't have time to look at the welfare of the men, but that is now changing. The government's approach is changing and all IPS officers are very conscious of looking after the welfare of the men. But in the paramilitary forces, the welfare of the men were very important. And why is welfare important even in the districts is that the percentage of housing for our men is very low. In the paramilitary forces, when I was working, the percentage of housing was only 14%. Only 14% people could live with families, and that also by rotation. And I don't know what is the percentage now in the state. What should be
We are
the
about 49%.
Still, it is only 49%, which is only half the police force can live with families. And of course, there is a logic to it, because whenever manpower is required urgently and a siren is sounded or a bugle is raised, men have to fall into line and move immediately for that duty, whether it is the paramilitary or the district police or the state police. So, under those circumstances, we have separated families. Families are living somewhere else, and you have to be concerned about them, about the wife, the welfare of the children. In the paramilitary, I learned that such large arrangements are made for families to stay, school, housing, hospitals, but that also is very inadequate. And our concern has to be high. And yes, as you say, even after they retire, their housing, whether their pension is reaching them on time or not, whether their gratuity has been paid on the day of retirement. Many paramilitary forces or in the CISF, I learned that on the day of the retirement only all the papers are handed over to them, which was not so in the state. I don't know what is happening in here, Praveen, whether you all are able to give it on the day of retirement. But these things have a lot of effect on the manpower. And loyalty will only come when you show concern. I mean, look at the CRPF or the BSF, and in BSF and all, people have calculated that the family stays for a very short time during his entire tenure of service. Very short time. And the same is of the CRPF, the same is for the ITBP and all. In the state it's a little better, but here is Praveen telling us that only 49 plus some percentage is available for housing. So concern for men is something should be basically topmost. And now we have ladies coming into the police force, concern for the ladies, their requirements, mobile toilets for them, barracks, eating arrangements for their food, everything has to be made in a different way. So I think police welfare is a very important subject, and we have to give a lot of attention to that.
In fact, they are deemed to be on duty 24/7.
Yes.
So no policeman can say, I'm off duty, I'll come tomorrow any time of the day or night.
Yes, that is also true. That is true.
So you mentioned about ladies, and with that I come to the final part of our conversation. You have a chapter called My Girls.
Yes.
And you have highlighted the importance of having a woman mentor for women officers in academy. I am not very great fan of philosophy that only women can look after women well, because once you say that, like all women police stations, I am totally personally against, not officially, personally against it, because once you say women will look after women, you are absolving the men of all the responsibility towards women.
Yes.
But you raised this importance of having women mentors in the academy and wrote about your girls. So tell us something more about the needs of women officers in training and even otherwise in service.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, and that I think spans my whole career, because I started as a lone woman and now we have in every organization 40, 50 lady officers in almost all kinds of services, not only the IPS, it's still there, but in the IAS, in the forest service, various services. In the police, I think it is important that women have come, and we should be conscious of their needs. And yes, at the police academy when I joined, Mr. Rivero, when he sort of briefed me, he said that now more and more women are coming. I think till 80, 81, 82, still there were only one woman police officer every year. Later on, larger numbers started coming out. And as I said, that when the lady officers went as the first in a state, there were problems like I had. They were always getting pushed back, and that would often create a lot of frustration in lady police officers, and they would discuss with me when they came back. And they had apprehensions that we would, by then the sandwich pattern of training had started. They did training, went to the state and came back. In our case, it was not like that. We all went to the state and we never saw each other's face again. And then when these ladies would come back to the academy, they would share with me how night rounds and all, SPs were very wary of taking them for night rounds if they were women. They would be told, don't do night rounds, don't do this, don't do that. And they felt very cheated that why they were not being sent for these duties. Later on, things started changing. At that time, I think it was important to mentor them and tell them that before they went, that mentoring had to happen. Like for simple thing like swimming, a lady officer telling me, ma'am, I will not get into the pool with her in a swimming costume. One lady officer, a probationer, told me. And I was a single person in my squad when I was getting trained, and unarmed combat, swimming, everything we had to do. So I had to convince her that, look, you can't be like this. You can't say I will not go for swimming, because it may happen that there are floods in your area and you have to also jump into the water to save somebody's life or to lead the men. This has happened. So I had to convince her. So that kind of mentoring was required, and in my time, we were left to fend for ourselves once we left the academy. So I think this gave the women a little bit more confidence when they went to the state. But I agree with Praveen that I do not believe that only women should look after women. Or I don't believe that all women police stations are very effective. Recently we had, Malini was also there when we had this all women police conference. You may ask me, why did you have only for women? But this is a place where women openly tell us about their difficulties, and that has to be incorporated in the suggestions to the ministry, and then the ministry takes steps to improve many things. And that is how we have had now reservations and extra funds allotted, the rules about uniforms, about training, about barracks, and everything has come about. So a lot of changes have been made. So in this context, when women are coming, when there are women police stations, there was a big study done by some women police officers, and we found that if you open a only woman police station, even men are hesitant to go there. They have doubts. They have doubts about the competence of women. They are not ready to go there. But in a police station, if you have a mixed crowd of women and men, the men complainants prefer to go to a woman. I don't know why this happens, but this is the finding. That the men are hesitant to go to all women police stations, but they do not. When they go to a mixed police station where there are women posted and men are posted, they are happy. They feel more confident talking about their complaint to a woman. So this is a situation we have to accept, and I think that it's not a good idea to have only women police stations or only. I think that becomes a handicap for women. They feel sheltered. We are raising all women battalions, etc. But later on, I think that there will be problems. We should have them mixed. So that's why even though there are all women battalions being raised, The deployment is always being done with a mixed crowd so that they get used to everything. And the concern of people like Praveen or other DGs has to be for the women, because amenities are not available. The amenities are not available for the men. As he says, housing in a state like Karnataka is so little. The same thing about women, their toilets, their barracks, their living conditions all have to be improved and looked after.
So, in fact, I always feel that rather than having all women police stations, we need women in all police stations.
Yes, that's a much
But
better idea.
I am taking liberty of asking some personal questions, and
Yes.
you need not answer if you feel offended. You have written somewhere in the book, the worst thing can happen to best of the persons, and marriage is one such thing. You had a bad marriage, and a lot of officers, lady and gents, and I will talk more about the lady officers who get into bad relationships, bad marriages, and some of them keep blaming themselves rest of their life. Some few others spend rest of their life fighting and taking revenge. You didn't choose any of these options. Of course, you were not in service when you got married. You moved on. In fact, you became IPS. I don't think you had thought of becoming a civil servant when you got married. And you didn't think of revenge. You didn't think of blaming yourself for a very bad marriage which lasted hardly few months. And you moved on. And here you are. So, what message you want to give to the young lady officers and gents officers and couples, how to make it work, the life-work balance and all?
Yes, it's a little personal, but I don't mind sharing. I've written very openly in my book, as many of you can read. But I personally think that sometimes unwittingly we are pushed into a situation, because as Praveen said, that this can happen to a man and a woman, the relationship going bad, because in India we still have a system of arranged marriages, isn't it? Even for men, wives are selected by parents, and very often for the women, the husbands are selected by other people. I came from an extremely sheltered background, was hardly ever mixed with a male person, male people. I was being groomed to be a good housewife, learning stitching, embroidery, cooking, must be good in my studies, and all this only to get a good husband. That was the aim of my parents. Even my mother was making me do my homework every day. It was only that I should do good grades, go to a good college, do well in my college so that they can get me a good groom. That was the attitude in those days. And sure enough, at a very young age of 18, 19, my marriage takes place. I don't even know ki kya ho raha hai, why my father taking me to Delhi, getting me my marriage fixed, and very soon the marriage not working. Till then, I never thought of anything. I thought what parents are deciding is fine. My father is and my parents are the custodian of my life, and they always want the best for me, but even they had probably not thought that things would turn out so horribly wrong for them. But I would like to say from my own experience, sharing very frankly, that whether you are a man or a woman, things can go wrong anytime. But you must give yourself another chance. If you keep on carrying that baggage of feeling frustrated, feeling anger, feeling that I was wrong, that is a very wrong attitude, and if you start life with that attitude, you will never be able to move ahead. You have to put it at the back. It can happen to a male officer, it can happen to a female officer. Please, if something like this happens, push it back. Look ahead, and look ahead to move ahead in life by equipping yourself and not always being dependent on somebody to look after you. It will not work. Give yourself another chance. If you are in a situation where you are already in service, you have already put in 5 or 10 years of service and still something goes wrong, even then, don't brood about it and don't have anger inside you. It is not going to take you anywhere. You have to face life with a little positive attitude, and I do a lot of mentoring to people. I have people, a lot of colleges and schools, universities request me to mentor young girls and all. And I come across some very, very interesting stories. The other day, I met a girl from Haryana, and she was studying at Ashoka University, and she was my mentor. She came as a mentee, and I started getting her background. She says that she somehow escaped from her village. She says her father died very young. She has a specially abled brother, and who stays at home. They have a piece of land, but they stay in some village in Haryana. And the mother, of course, lost her husband very early. And the grandmother stays in the house to look after the mother, to be with the mother and also look after this disabled child. She was being sent to school, to school and study. So she finished her school, she finished her graduation, but every time she walked in the colony, the village lane to reach her house, people will shout to her mother and tell her, why are you wasting money on her? Why are you wasting money on the girl when you don't have anything? There is a son you have to look after. Why are you wasting money? Get her married. Every day she was being told this. So one day she literally escaped and went to this university and wrote herself. Somehow she got into the exam and went, and she says, after that I don't go to the village. I talk to my mother every day and my grandmother, but I don't go to the village at all. So I started mentoring her. I said, it's a very brave step you have taken. Don't look back. Move ahead in your life. And today she is trying herself for the civil services, but is working at a nice position in the Maharashtra government, where NGOs these days are being employed for developmental activities. So she has also charted a place. She didn't say, oh, I have a disabled brother, my father is lost, I should now not do anything, my mother will get me married, I should go to another village. She also broke the shackles to get out of the village where every morning she's been told that she should be married off. So I look at it like that one has to move on and give yourself a chance. Give yourself a second chance. Things can't be. You may have a child who is disabled and you may feel very frustrated. Oh, I have a child like this. What can I do now? My life is finished. What do I have to look forward to? But look at that, rehabilitating that child and moving forward. You may have another child who's fine. So there are circumstances happening in everybody's life, and don't always get bogged down into the here and now and look to the future. That's what I would say, Praveen. That's what I would say.
Well, with this very sound advice about marriage, relationships, how to manage work and family, we come to the end of this session, and before I leave the floor open for a couple of questions, I would request Mrs. Vandita Sharma, our Chief Secretary, is there to release the book first, and then we'll have one or two questions before we break for dinner. Ma'am? Oh, she's not here. So, anyway, we can have a couple of questions. The floor is open. Any question?
SPA or suggested, but directly from the state you went to the SPA.
Yes, in those days we didn't have anything like opting or giving your options, etc.
Yeah.
You were just picked up and you went to any organization. So I went directly from the state to NPA.
But how did Mr. Rivero know you at that time?
He did not know me. He says he was special secretary in the government of India,
Yeah.
and I have recorded all that, and he was told by Mr. Arun Nehru to revamp the training at the police academy, and they said then the director NPA requested that ladies are coming into the service now, it will be good to have a lady police officer. So they first asked for Kiran Bedi, and she was not willing. So Mr. Rivero, he told us, and he's recorded it also, that he went through the ACRs of several lady officers, And then he found that I had done a field and I had done other things. And my husband was also an IPS officer. So he felt that in one go he gets 2 IPS officers for the police academy. And that is how he has gone. And Mr. Ribeiro, whenever I meet him, he's like my role model and mentor. If I meet him anywhere, he'll recount this story. How he selected both of us because he thought he killed 2 birds with one stone.
You get one free. So with these words, of course, many of the questions, answers to many of the questions which you have in your mind, you will find in the book. You must take the book. You must, all of us must read this book, and we give her a standing ovation. And I would request Mrs. Vandita Sharma to come and release the book.
Oh, it's so nice
Our
of
Chief
you to
Secretary.
come.